All right, so diving into Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, um, buckle up, because we're talking about a world, well, where dragon riders guard a nation teetering on the brink, where magic simmers beneath the surface. And romance, well, let's just say it's not just stolen glances.
It's a captivating story, that's for sure. And it seems like, from your notes at least, you're already quite taken with Violet, the young dragon rider at the heart of it all.
Oh, totally. I mean, who wouldn't be? You're navigating duty, secrets, and the fate of the world. Oh, wow, while training with these magnificent creatures. Plus, I gotta say, the world building is really something else.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got Navarre, this nation just clinging to survival, and it's protected by these really intense magical wards.
Ah, yes. The wards, they're essential, really, to the story's core conflict. Just try to imagine it. A society utterly dependent on these shields, powered by dragon fire, holding back this tide of, well, monstrous creatures, wyverns they're called. Resources are stretched thin, and the very existence of Navarre hangs in the balance.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes Violet's journey so compelling.
Right.
She's not just, like, learning to fly and control her dragon, but she's also thrust into this world of impossible choices, political maneuvering, and this looming threat. And speaking of threats, the wyverns themselves, from what I've read, at least, they're connected to something even more sinister, right?
Yeah.
This venom. It honestly gives me chills just thinking about it.
And this is where Yarros' skill as a writer, it truly shines. The venom, you see, they aren't just, mindless monsters. They represent, in a way, a force of chaos, a disruption of the balance that this world's magic relies upon. It adds this layer of philosophical depth to the narrative.
It's true.
Exploring not just physical threats, but also the potential unraveling of the world's very fabric.
It reminds me, honestly, of those classic fantasy tropes, like the idea of forbidden knowledge,
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, what's the true cost of maintaining peace and order? And is it even worth sacrificing individual freedom or even love for the sake of the greater good? And all of these themes, they seem to be playing out in Violet's story.
Absolutely. It's evident from your markings, at least, that you picked up on this internal struggle that Violet faces. Her desire to protect her loved ones clashes with the rigid structure of the Dragon Rider Academy. Basgiath, it's called. And this conflict, I think, is really at the heart of her arc, navigating personal convictions against the weight of duty and tradition.
It's like on the one hand, she's this dedicated cadet training alongside her squad, the Iron Squad, which, by the way, is such a cool name, right?
Oh, definitely.
But on the other hand, she's grappling with these unsettling truths, sensing that things aren't as black and white as they seem.
Yeah.
Especially within the academy itself.
Yes, and this is where the theme of trust, or rather the lack thereof, becomes paramount. Violet finds herself questioning the motives of those around her, even those in positions of authority.
Which honestly makes you wonder, who can she really trust?
Yeah.
This world, it's like deception is lurking around every corner.
It can feel that way, yes.
It seems like she's constantly questioning everything and everyone, trying to figure out where her loyalty truly lies. It's got to be a tough spot to be in, especially for someone so young.
Exactly. And this internal struggle, it's further complicated by the emergence of her unique magical abilities. Her signet, which seems to be developing in ways that, deviate from the norm.
So we've got this, intense pressure cooker of secrets and forbidden magic, political intrigue, all of that. And then on top of all that, Violet discovers her powers. They're different. Maybe even dangerous. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Talk about a recipe for, some serious self-doubt.
It's a classic coming-of-age trope, sure. But Yarros infuses it with such nuance. Imagine it. You're surrounded by all these prodigies, right, at Basgiath. And everyone, they seem to have total control over their abilities. And then there's Violet, grappling with this power, a power she doesn't fully understand.
And it's not just about, the how of her magic, right?
Right.
From what you mentioned earlier about the venom and the world's balance, it seems like the very nature of her powers, they could mark her as a potential threat.
Oh, absolutely.
Even a weapon. That's a lot for anyone to carry, let alone, a young woman.
Precisely. And, this ties directly into the romantic aspect of the story, which you've highlighted in your notes, I see. And it's not just, a case of insta-love or anything. It's a slow burn, really. A dance of attraction and suspicion.
Haddon, right. He's the other dragon rider, the one shrouded in mystery. And he's incredibly skilled. I got to admit, I was pretty much sucked into their dynamic from the first interaction.
Oh, he's a fascinating character, for sure. He embodies that archetype, the brooding, protective love interest. But Yarros, She cleverly subverts expectations, I think. He's drawn to Violet, that much is clear. But he's also guarded, holding back information. Perhaps even keeping secrets that, well, that could shatter Violet's world.
And doesn't that kind of mirror the larger conflicts of the story? I mean, you've got Violet trying to figure out who to trust in this academy. That honestly feels more and more like a gilded cage every day, all while falling for this guy who seems to represent, like, freedom and danger in equal measure.
It's compelling dynamic.
It really is.
And what I find fascinating is how Yarros uses their romance to explore the complexities of power dynamics, you know? You've got Satan, he's older, he's more experienced. And his position within the Dragon Rider hierarchy, well, it inherently gives him an advantage over Violet.
So it's like his protectiveness is kind of a double-edged sword.
Precisely.
On the one hand, he's clearly, like, looking out for her. But on the other hand, is he really shielding her from danger? Or is he manipulating her into, I don't know, a certain course of action? It's a question that really does linger throughout the story.
It certainly does. And this tension, well, it's heightened by the fact that their bond isn't just emotional, right? It's magical as well. You highlighted a passage, I believe, where their powers seem to resonate with each other, almost like a shared language that bypasses words.
Yeah, and that scene where their dragons react to their connection.
Oh, yes.
Talk about, like, setting the mood. But it also raises some questions about agency. Like, are they really choosing each other? Or are their powers, their destinies, are they somehow intertwined in a way that neither of them can really control?
It's a question, I imagine, that Violet herself is wrestling with. After all, she's already questioning everything else in her life. Why should her feelings for Zodin be any different?
Right, exactly. And this is where General Melgren enters the picture. It's like, talk about adding another layer of complexity to Violet's story.
Ah, yes, General Melgren. You noted, I believe, how his introduction signals a bit of a shift in the narrative's tone. He's a figure of immense authority, you see, the head of Navarre's military, and yet there's this undercurrent of ruthlessness beneath his, shall we say, polished facade.
Definitely. It's almost like Yarros wants us to question, like, everything we think we know about leadership duty, all of it. Like, Melgren, he embodies this idea that sometimes, even those in power,
right,
they're willing to make, well, morally ambiguous choices, all for what they believe is the greater good.
And this, of course, directly challenges Violet's sense of right and wrong. I mean, remember, she's already grappling with the possibility that the academy, this institution she's always believed in, it might be built on a foundation of, well, secrets and lies.
So then Melgren arrives and throws another wrench into the works.
Essentially, yeah.
He's not just some distant figurehead. He's actively involved in the academy, in the training of dragon riders, maybe even influencing the decisions that will shape the future of Devar.
Precisely. And his methods, his willingness to prioritize the mission above all else. Well, it puts him in direct conflict with Violet's growing sense of compassion and empathy as well. She's starting to realize that the lines between, us and them, they're often blurred, and that even the enemy, well, they deserve to be seen as individuals, not just, faceless threats.
Which is a huge theme in a lot of fantasy, right?
It is.
That deconstruction of good versus evil, and realizing that sometimes the most difficult battles, they aren't fought on the battlefield.
Yeah.
But within ourselves.
Exactly, and this internal conflict, it's mirrored in Violet's relationships with her squad mates as well. You marked a passage, I believe, where she observes that even within the Iron Squad, there are cracks beneath the surface of camaraderie.
Which, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They're all under immense pressure, constantly being tested, pushed to their limits. It's only natural that some resentments would, fester, especially when you throw in the added element of, like, competition for recognition, advancement within the ranks.
And let's not forget the looming threat of the Wyverns and the even more enigmatic Venin. Their existence serves as a constant reminder of the stakes involved.
It's like with every chapter, every page, these stakes, they just keep multiplying,
And that's what makes it so compelling.
Totally. It's like everyone and everything in Violet's world. It's pushing her to, like, define what she really believes in, who she'll stand with, what she's willing to fight for.
You've touched on, I think, a really crucial aspect of the novel, this sense of, well, relentless pressure, both internal and external, that in a way I think it mirrors a lot of the anxieties of our own world.
Oh, for sure.
It's no wonder, really, that readers are connecting with Violet's story.
Right. It's like Yarros has taken these like classic fantasy elements. You've got dragons, magic, political intrigue, all of that, and she's woven them into a narrative that feels honestly incredibly relevant to the challenges we face today even.
Yeah.
Struggling with uncertainty, navigating these really complex relationships, and finding the courage to, speak truth to power, even when it's like utterly terrifying.
And that's where Iron Flame, I think, transcends being, simply an entertaining read. It sparks reflection, makes you think, if we were in Violet's shoes, facing those impossible decisions, what would we prioritize? Loyalty to a system, even if it's flawed, or loyalty to our own, moral compass?
It's a question with honestly no easy answers.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the ending so powerful. And I don't want to give anything away for those who haven't finished it yet, of course. But it's safe to say that Violet, she makes choices that are both surprising and honestly kind of inevitable, given her journey throughout the story.
And those choices, those acts of, defiance and sacrifice, they really underscore the novel's message of hope, that even in a world that's, teetering on the brink, where these ancient powers are stirring, trust is, it's a fragile thing. There's always the potential for individuals to make a difference.
It's like, even if the entire system feels, rigged against you, a single act of courage, a spark of defiance, it can ignite a flame of change. That's a message I think we all need to hear sometimes.
And one that lingers, I think, long after you've turned that final page. That's the mark of truly compelling storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. So to wrap things up, if you're looking for a fantasy novel that'll just sweep you away into this world of like breathtaking action, complex characters, thought-provoking themes, Iron Flame is... It's definitely...
It's a fantastic read.
This deep dive has been, it's been quite a ride. Thanks for joining us, as always, as we, explore the magic, the intrigue, and the really heart-pounding romance of Iron Flame.
Until next time, then, remember, keep questioning, keep exploring, and, may your own inner flame burn bright.